Over the past 2 decades, we've had our fair share of some incredible FPS games, but none have even come close to the popularity and influence of Call of Duty, which 20 years after its inception remains the biggest franchise on the planet. How did it get to this point though? Well, strap in because we're going back in time. Let's start with the inception of Call of Duty. Given the highly decorated legacy that Call of Duty has developed over the past couple of decades, you'd think that it's an ancient franchise. But the truth is that even games like Halo, Medal of Honor, and Battlefield came years before the first COD had even been announced. Xbox had already cracked the code of a first-person shooter on console, and Medal of Honor was the big dog when it came to World War games. So in a way, you could say that these other franchises paved the way for Call of Duty to exist. However, what Infinity Ward brought to the table with its first game was something truly special, and honestly, the world wouldn't be the same without it. So let's rewind back to the summer of 2002. Medal of Honor Allied Assault had just come out and was dominating the FPS space. However, many of the studio's employees thought that they could have made a better game with more creative freedom. So what did they do? They left 2015 Inc. and formed their own team led by Vince Zampella, Grant Collier, and Jason West called Infinity Ward. And with big ambitions, some funding from Activision, and 22 people, the newly formed studio started working on the first Call of Duty game, the World War era. Releasing only a year into its development, the first Call of Duty turned out to be a massive success. It quickly rose up the sales charts, selling almost 800,000 copies and becoming the 8th best-selling game of 2003. In fact, the game was so successful for a first outing that Activision just bought the entire studio. Of course, we'd had World War II games before, but COD really revolutionized the friendly AI, allowing players to command allies for support. And this change brought a whole new dimension to the game, with a greater emphasis on squad-based play. Oh, and it had multiple campaigns from the perspective of different soldiers. It didn't take Infinity Ward long to move to their next project though, and within a couple of years they had their next game ready to go, Call of Duty 2. Now, from the looks of things, the second game looked like an iterative update. However, in hindsight, it turned out to be one of the most important installments in the history of the franchise. It brought us the regenerating health system, which modern games are still using, and the story and sound design, utterly immaculate. Also, it was the most popular launch title for the Xbox 360, which gave it a massive boost. In the meantime though, Treyarch, which was another team at Activision, was also working on its own Call of Duty game. And while they had worked on a COD 2 expansion before, this would be their first foray into a full release for the franchise. So since this game was being developed simultaneously, it ended up coming out only a year after the second game. However, Call of Duty 3 didn't quite meet everyone's expectations and had mixed reviews. Next, we have the golden age of COD. No one was ready for what Infinity Ward had been cooking after Call of Duty 2 though. They essentially rewrote their entire formula and brought the series to a modern setting. The visuals also got a massive bump thanks to an upgraded engine. The end result? Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. Now, we really don't even need to go into why Modern Warfare was such a revolutionary game, as that would probably take days. But we'll just say that to this day, it remains one of the best games ever played. Everything from the story, the visuals, and the gameplay to the super fun multiplayer was perfect. On the other side of Activision, Treyarch was also cooking up its next Call of Duty game. However, unlike Infinity Ward, they decided to stick with the World War II setting, which the world had arguably moved on from. So, Call of Duty World at War ended up getting a positive reception, which was still nowhere near Modern Warfare. It did introduce us to the Zombies mode though, which has become a staple of the franchise now. It was a constant onslaught of incredible COD games though, as only a year later in 2009, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 was released. It was more of the same from Infinity Ward, but that's what people wanted. So the sequel, with the same great characters, story, and multiplayer, was also incredibly successful. And by this point, Treyarch had gotten the memo too, so they also shifted their focus from World War to the Cold War era, and their game, Call of Duty Black Ops, finally got the respect and reception that Infinity Ward was getting. The demise of Infinity Ward. While Treyarch was celebrating its success with Black Ops though, things weren't going great at Infinity Ward despite the recent success with Modern Warfare 2. And due to some contractual disputes, the studio heads Vince Zampella and Jason West ended up getting released from the company. Now, they went on to form their own studio, Respawn Entertainment, but back here it seemed like Modern Warfare Studio had kinda lost all direction. So starting from Modern Warfare 3, we could already see things going downhill as the game failed to replicate the critical success of the previous two entries. And by the time Ghost was released in 2013, 2013, it seemed like Infinity Ward was already clutching at straws for any crumb of inspiration, as this was probably the lowest point for Call of Duty as a franchise. Treyarch was still keeping the lights on though, as its futuristic entry Black Ops 2 had an incredible multiplayer mode, and a pretty decent story mode as well. Oh, and the zombies mode was still going strong, but even their success was short-lived. Now on to the jetpack era. As we entered the PS4 and Xbox One generation, it almost looked like someone had just stolen Call of Duty's mojo. None of the games were hitting, and somehow things kept getting worse. However, one of the factors for this lull was also the game's yearly release, which was almost impossible to keep up with just 2 studios. So, Activision let Infinity Ward breathe for a while and brought in Sledgehammer Games instead for their game Advanced Warfare. Now, in theory, this was a follow-up to the Modern Warfare franchise, but in reality, the game brought nothing new to the table. Also, this was a very strange time for first-person shooters, as most of them were somehow set in a futuristic time and had jetpacks and wall-running mechanics. And it seemed like no one really liked that, so we're not really sure why they kept making those. But the dark themes continued for Call of Duty, as not even Treyarch could produce a good game with Black Ops 3. And for the next few years, we just got a bunch of mediocre Call of Duty releases like Infinite Warfare, World War II, and Black Ops 4. If you're into campaigns though, Infinite Warfare is still a good shout. The Resurgence and Warzone. What do you do when you've had a long drought of good games and no one seems to like anything you've done recently? You go back to your roots. And this is exactly what Infinity Ward did with their quote-unquote boots on the ground tagline. They tried to capture their glory days and brought Call of Duty Modern Warfare back from the dead with a reboot. And guess what? It was a massive success. Oh, and since the Battle Royale craze was at an all-time high, they also dropped their own take on the genre only 6 months later with Warzone, and the rest is history. On the other side, it seemed like Treyarch also had suddenly gotten its mojo back as it released Black Ops Cold War. However, the most impressive thing about these entries was the fact that they all seamlessly integrated with the ongoing Warzone Battle Royale. And finally, the current time. And all of this brings us to the current timeline. Warzone is still incredibly popular and is actually a massive cash cow for Activision. Oh, and did we mention that they got acquired by Microsoft, meaning that future Call of Duty games would come to Game Pass? Not only that, but the series is also going to see its first skipped year since Call of Duty 2 way back in 2005. And even though Sledgehammer's Vanguard didn't quite get the reception that they'd hoped for, everyone saw it coming, since again, no one seems to want a World War II game these days. The future for the series looks bright though, as Infinity Ward is gearing up to release the follow-up to its Modern Warfare reboot later this year. That's not all though, as a sequel to Warzone is also in the works alongside it. That's all for this video though. Do you think that Call of Duty will continue to be just as relevant going into the next decade? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.